you're now going to work on the legal compliance work. Now, NIBA will bring together, a fairly good round of legal assistance here. Now, we believe in formal teachings. Now, when I do a deal, when I did a deal at Nomura, and I'm finished with the entire thing and we're ready to go, I would call up the institutional sales desk and say, hey, listen, sending you over some material, we've already discussed it, we formalized the deal, ready to go now, churn up your course, and he says, great, call compliance, we get a meeting together. So we get a meeting together, and a presentation is put together, not for the investors, but for the people who are selling this deal, so that they can understand it, and they can represent it, and they have a chance to ask questions. And the FAQs, the cheat sheets are produced, they digest it, chances are they'll start a whisper marketing effort, they'll call up people and they'll say, hey listen, we're looking at a deal, we're probably going to do it next month, right? The deal is a $500 million securitization for a power plant in Nigeria. Right? It's got an 8% coupon on tranche 2, goes down to 4% on tranche 1. What do you think? How much do you think? Are we pricing it right? And so they'll come back, and then there's generally a second conference which says, you all smoke and dope, right? You may have thought you knew the market, but we just spoke to the market, and it's not flying. And so you recraft it out based on what people are telling you. And so finally, they have the materials to do what they're good at, which is representing and selling a transaction. And now, so you go through the deal placement, the actual selling of the deal, and finally, of course, the closing. Right? I have left out the most important step here, which is the closing dinner, right? Which is really critical. It is what you remember the most. And then you go through IR and aftermarket support. I said that we are a relationship investment bank. So I won't mention the name of a certain investment bank that runs a very large conference in New York every year. But when they're finished with the transaction, they're finished. I mean, lose their number unless you're ready to do the next transaction. We probably meet with our clients on a quarterly basis and run the phone with them every several weeks or months. And so our clients have been with us, many of them, by the way, for years and years. And very often, by the way, the CEOs of those companies, as they move from company to company, right, pull us into that process. And as an example, we represented, do you all know the story of Cypress Biosciences? Does anyone know the story of Cypress? Very hot neuro company. Went from cement floor to about 800 million market cap. We were along for a lot of that ride. The CEO who started it all has probably the best resume I've ever read. I mean, he's PhD, MD, he's an ex-McKinsey consultant. He did a bunch of things, wound up at Cypress as CEO. He built it up from cement floor up to a fairly substantial market cap. He left Cypress and he came to work for Griffin. And he did work on a major client engagement as a consultant. And by the way, the client wants to hire him now as CEO. Well, we've already told him that his investment bank is going to be great. And of course it will be. And so when I say that IR and aftermarket support is the last item, it is the way we develop, right, continuing client relationships. And if we are successful in building a syndicate, and we can do progressively larger deals, and our experience grows from doing that $20 and $30 million syndicate to doing the $50, $60, $70 million syndicate, our capacity to raise capital will parallel the need for capital that many of our clients have. And that's an ideal situation. It generates loyalty on both sides. And by the way, it generates fees. The one thing that we should say that's part of a syndicate. Now, in an underwriting, this is a big part of the syndicate because you are signing your balance sheet to your underwriting agreement. I don't know, how many people here do underwriting versus placement? Okay. Well, you know of what I speak. You don't sign an underwriting agreement very easily. And generally, your lawyer is asking you why you're doing it. But with that said, even in a selling or placement syndicate, where there aren't the same balance sheet commitments, there still must be some form of commitment. Now, it may be more of a, not just best efforts, but a super best efforts. I will break down the walls to meet my commitments, right, to the selling syndicate. So if you're committing $2 million or $3 million or $5 million to your syndicate, it really behooves you to do that. So we also will develop, I would suppose, within NIBA, a standard agreement which defines amongst the people participating in the syndicate, whether they are book runners, managers, or sales agents, what the reps and warranties will be amongst the parties. And that way, we all ensure that number one, we're compliant, and number two, we haven't generated additional risk for our firms where we should. Now, we also will put in place a standard engagement letter, and engagement letters at the major banks envision the potential for syndicate. And so our engagement letters, should change to reflect that fact.